Oh, those geese are like a perfect V. That's a lot of geese. Hi, my name is Jamie Paul, and welcome back to my channel. I filmed a video earlier today, but I wanted to film another one talking about another Dollar Tree book review. The glare, okay. If you're not aware, Dollar Tree has a book section that primarily consists of books that didn't sell at like Target or Walmart or were overstock, and because it's a random assortment, I really like to look through and see if I can find any good books. I find a few diamonds in the rough, and I find a lot of not so great books. And today I'm going to be talking about Good Me, Bad Me by Ali Land. This is kind of a difficult book to explain. I think it's YA. I would consider it YA. It's mostly about teenagers, and there wasn't anything too graphic or inappropriate that I wouldn't have read as a teenager, so I would consider it YA. It is, I guess, a horror. It's not really mystery. It's not really a thriller. I guess it would be a psychological mystery. It's not really a thriller, and it's got some horror elements, but not like overtly horror. So it's, I don't know how to explain it. It's more about like mental illness, maybe. I'll just explain the book. So the premise of this book is that the main character is the daughter of a serial killer, and she turns her mother in to the police, and therefore is the like key eyewitness and needs to testify against her mother in the trial. And that's very difficult for her because even though she knows her mother is a bad person and what she did is wrong, she was also horribly abused, and growing up in that environment, it's obviously warped her perception of right and wrong, and that's her mother, and her mother was good to her but also a bad person and also hurt her, and that's like kind of normal for victims of abuse, is that they have this complicated relationship in which they know that the person who abused them is wrong and is a bad person, but also feel deeply connected to them and still want to see the good or see them as a good person, especially a parental figure. So that's kind of the internal conflict that's going on with Millie, the main character. The main character goes into witness protection / a foster home with the therapist who's taking care of her and helping her through her traumas while also preparing her to testify against her mom in the trial. So Millie goes into foster care with the therapist's dad and his wife, who is kind of distant and not really good with children. She's also cheating on him. And their daughter, who's the same age as Millie, named Phoebe, who is just a straight up bully, mean girl, bad situation. The dad takes in a lot of foster kids, and so Phoebe feels kind of replaced. Obviously, her parents are going to be taken care of and thinking more about the foster children that they're in charge of rather than Phoebe. She's kind of put on a back burner, and that makes her feel, kind of distanced from her parents, and so she takes that out on the foster kids, and I totally get that. A lot of, especially teen books will have, a bully character who is just absolutely horrendous, but like for no reason, and if they're given a reason, it's superficial. It's like, oh, she's also insecure, and that's why she takes it out on you by literally scarring your face or something like that. So this added backstory gives, kind of more depth on why Phoebe is mean to Millie. Because it's such a high profile case, I mean, this is a serial killer who's been in the news for a really long time. They're not allowed to say anything about Millie's identity or why she's there in the foster system. So Phoebe just kind of sees her as another foster student, not somebody who is going through a lot. I think all foster students, did I say students? I think all foster kids are going through a lot, though. It's kind of why they're in the foster system. Phoebe's just a mean person. She's just mean. Millie goes to a new school. It's a private rich kid school. she feels out of place. And Millie also has a friend who is a few years younger than her. She's like 12 or 13, who lives nearby. They keep saying she lives on the estate. I don't know enough about like London housing to know what the estate means. I don't know if that's supposed to show that she's like poor. Morgan also comes from a very abusive household. Like, she is seen with a few bruises, and Millie's like, what happened? And she's like, oh, it's my uncle. You know, we were removed from the house, but we had to go back, or something like that. Or like, and I thought that would be a nice parallel to Millie. Like, obviously Millie came from a very abusive and traumatic situation, and so she could connect to Morgan through that shared trauma. And then some conflict could be that Morgan is jealous of Millie for being able to live with a nicer family and being taken into the foster system. But none of that happens. Millie is just like, she even says it outright, like she feels like she's manipulating Morgan, and she knows how to manipulate children due to what her mom taught her. Her mom also, I don't know if I said this, she was a serial killer who killed children, primarily young boys. So Millie would befriend children and then help them like trust her mom, and then her mom would kidnap them and do things, right? Anyway, Millie and Morgan become friends due to Millie's like manipulation of her. The main conflict of this is the trial. Millie's getting prepared to testify against her mom, and she has this internalized conflict of, am I like my mom? Her mom tried to train her to also do the things that her mom did, and she, you know, obviously feels like she comes from a bad situation. It's been instilled in her that she is a bad person because of her relationship to her mom. She doesn't feel like she deserves a new start. She was a child growing up in a house where her mother killed children, so she has a lot of survivor's guilt. She also has internalized guilt of befriending these children and then taking them to her mom, a lot of things like that. And it's this internalized idea of good Millie versus bad Millie. Millie can be good. She doesn't want to be like her mom. She wants to start a new life and be seen as a good person, and help the people that she didn't get to help before, right? Help the children get justice, right? But then there's also bad Millie, the Millie that still loves her mom to some degree, the Millie that's still under her mom's control. The idea that she will always be tainted by this relationship to her mother. There's a book called The Bad Seed, or like just Bad Seed. I never actually read it, but I saw some reviews, and the whole point is that there's this like psychopath little kid who is kind of murderous or becomes murderous, and the mother realizes that her biological relative, parent or grandparent, I can't remember, was also a murderer. And the mom then grapples with this idea of like, is this murderousness inherited, and I have created a murdering child, or was it, it's nature versus nurture? Is this because I fucked up this child? Something like that. I don't actually remember how that book ends or what the message of that book was. That's all I could think about was that review I saw of that book when reading this book, is like, Millie obviously wants to be a good person, but also came from such bad seed. So like, can she be a good person? That's the internal struggle that she has. Within the book, there is like no question. There is no tension to what it is, because every time she would be like tempted to be bad, she would think about the bad things, she would immediately go, no, I don't want to be under my mom's control. I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't want to be bad. And so you're like, okay, whatever. She's not going to be bad. There's no tension. Whatever. The author doesn't tell you outright what happens, which, I mean, is supposed to be a lead up to the trial where all the truth is revealed. But it just seems almost like not needed, because there's too much hinted at the beginning that anybody who has read any kind of serial killer or horror or thriller novel could immediately guess what happens and could probably guess the explanation on why. And when we're given an explanation on why, it's not a surprise on why it happened. So like every time she would flash back and it would be like mysterious and vague, I would be sitting there going, well, I already know what's gonna happen. I already know. I can fill in the blanks of this vagueness. It doesn't need to be that vague. And then when it's all revealed, I'm like, whatever. Millie and Phoebe are always at odds with each other, and Millie never tells an adult about Phoebe, like her bullying and what she does, and I presume that's just because she felt if she told anybody, it would just come back on her like tenfold. Like if she told the father that Phoebe was bullying her, then Phoebe would just like hurt her more. But like Millie is part of this like high class court case, and some of the things they do to her are really detrimental, and it's like you could just tell somebody and they could just, it just seemed weird that she didn't tell anybody. There was no reason of like Millie thinking maybe she deserved this punishment from Phoebe, and that's why she didn't tell, is like she felt this internalized need to be punished. And at a certain point it was like, this is cat and mouse. Phoebe does this to me, I do this to her. And it's like, why that isn't necessary. That doesn't help anything. And it just seemed like in a different story that would make sense, but in this story, when there's so much else going on, it didn't make sense. All in all, this book was about a 3-star book for me, maybe 3.5, because there were some parts of it that were really intriguing, but then the last couple of chapters, I wanted to throw the book down. It was like the last, 40 pages, where I was like, this really, we're going this way, this is what we're doing, okay. During the trial, it's revealed that Millie, well, she doesn't reveal it on trial, but she reveals in her narration that the last child that was killed by her mother before she was turned in was actually, Millie had killed the child because she was trying to save him. Her mother was going to torture him more. She just suffocated the child, which I get for why Millie this makes sense to reveal. I don't understand, like, during the trial, the defense was going so hard in on Millie. They even say, like, multiple times, the prosecution and the judge are like, the witness is not on trial, you don't need to, like, ask her about if she had anything to do with this. They just keep hounding her about that, just, I guess, so Millie has a reason to tell through narration what happened. The mother had obviously killed the other children. There was no reason she wouldn't be guilty. I guess, I don't know how court proceedings go. I guess maybe this is normal for them to, like, want to, even though she's guilty on all these other counts, they want to give her one less guilty verdict, or they wanted to maybe put into question the witness's reliability if she also was a part of this. I guess, I don't know. That might be what is going on. Anyway, it's revealed that Millie killed the child. And she's like, I did it out of safety. I did it to save him so that he didn't have to endure what my mother was going to do with him. And then I immediately went to the police afterwards. And you're like, okay, well, the good me, bad me part of it, she wants to be a good person. She obviously did a bad thing. And that's supposed to be a big twist. And I get it, but I also could kind of see it coming. I was like, she either killed him or she didn't. There's no other reason they would be harping on this so much if she didn't kill him. So I was like, okay, well, it's not a really big twist for me. It's not super surprising, but it does, affect this internal monologue that Millie has. She is now proven that she is killed like her mother, but because she had different intentions and because she comes from this horrible, situation, we can still sympathize with her and think of her as good Millie. She is still a good person. And this is reinforced when her friend Morgan comes to her like bloody and bruised, and she's like, my uncle is abusing me, this is my uncle's doing, there's no way I can escape him, and can I just stay with you tonight? And Millie's like, yes, of course, here, let me get you cleaned up. And then as Morgan's falling asleep, Millie is like holding a pillow, and she's like, I could save Morgan, because obviously she is being tortured by a bad parent or a bad parental figure, just as all of Millie's mother's victims were being tortured. And so Millie is like, I could save Morgan, just like I saved that little boy. And then Morgan is like, what are you doing with that pillow? And Millie immediately is like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. So it's reinforced. Millie has this warped idea of what is good and bad, and that she justifies her ending the life of a little boy because she was saving him from a worse torture. And then it's reinforced that she knows that that is wrong, and that her warpedness of good and bad is not actually that warped, right? It's a dumb little twist, it's whatever, but it's a normal like through line of this book, of the good me versus bad me. I totally get it. And then it's all ruined. The foster dad tells Millie, hey, since your trial has ended, we're going to place you in a different foster home. You knew this was always going to be temporary. I need to focus on my daughter Phoebe. Obviously, she's got some issues that I need to work with to help her, help mend my relationship with her, right? He doesn't say that outright to Millie, but like that's what Millie infers. Millie freaks out because she really, really likes Mike as the foster dad. She really wants him to stay her foster dad. She wants to stay here. Tries to overdose, is saved. Mike obviously cares about her, and she knows Mike cares about her, and she's allowed to stay until like the end of the school year or the school term. I want to get detailed with this because I want you as the viewer to understand how it felt reading this. So it's like the last few chapters. There's like a play that they've been getting ready to do. So at the end of the school day, Phoebe leaves, and Millie makes a point to tell Mike that she is staying after school to help set up the sets for the play. She goes to get snacks for all the students as they stay after school, and then suddenly it's like 7 o'clock. She's like, oh my god, we got all the sets built, that's great. And she walks out with her teacher, and then she gets a call from Mike, and he's like, don't come home, there's been an accident, like go stay with our neighbor. And then she goes to stay with the neighbor, and then Mike comes to pick her up, and he's like covered in blood, and he's like, there's been an accident, Phoebe died, Phoebe is dead, my little girl, she's gone. And immediately I was like, what? Huh? Phoebe was often described sitting on like the banister of the stairs, and so she apparently slipped and fell and cracked her head open on the floor and is now dead, right? So as they're walking back to the house, the policeman is asking Millie about where she was, just routinely. I need to know where you were and when you last saw Phoebe. And she's like, Phoebe left at the end of the school day at like 4 o'clock, and then I stayed with the play people to build sets. There were 15 other girls there. They all saw me there. I walked home with my teacher, or I walked out with my teacher, and then Mike called me, and I stayed with the neighbor, right? And the guy's like, okay, cool. And as I read that, I was like, wait a minute, didn't she go to get snacks at some point? And I looked back at the like beginning of the chapter, and yeah, she went to go get snacks, right? And I immediately was like, oh, Millie killed Phoebe. Like, obviously, right? And so at that point, because I was so done with it, I was kind of skimming the rest of the chapter. It was like, the play went really well. Phoebe had a memorial. Mike is really sad. And Millie is like suddenly super cold and manipulative. She's always felt like she was super manipulative before. She would be like, I feel like I'm manipulating Morgan. I know how to like get her to like me. And then it's like, you gave her a bag of chips and she was then your friend. So, like, that's not really manipulating her. But this is actually, like, I'm manipulating Saskia so that she likes me and I can replace Phoebe and stay there. And, like, the second to last chapter, it ends with, let me see if I can find it. The only thing that matters to me, if I can show you, is not getting caught. I saw that and was like, oh my god, they really went with this. And then at the end, the last chapter is Mike coming on to Millie being like, what really happened to your mom's last victim? Did you lie? What really happened? And then he's like, what really happened with Phoebe? Were you, what happened? Like, he's coming on to her. Like, he understands. He's piecing all the things together. He found out that Phoebe was super bullying Millie. He saw all of this stuff. He also found out that Phoebe had pieced together why Millie was there. And so he was like, did she threaten you? Blah, blah, blah. Where were you? And he said, like, I talked to people and they said you were gone to go get snacks. And Millie's like, yeah, I was gone for like 5 minutes. I did go get snacks. And she's like explaining afterwards, like to the audience, she's like, yeah, I went to get snacks. But also, since the store was right next to our house, I was able to push Phoebe off. She killed her. She like admits to killing her. And it's like, we knew that. You could have just left it not even open-ended, but just kind of vague, but no, you had to double down and have Millie like explain in detail what happened. And it's like, we didn't need to know that. And it just completely ruins the like whole idea of Millie's good me versus bad me duality, because like at first you could just be like, oh, she's got this guilt and she feels like she's bad, but she knows she's good and she wants to be good. And then she's got this guilt because she did a bad thing, but she did it because she was doing a good thing. And so it's super complicated, and in her head it's like really complicated to her. And she wants to be good, but she doesn't know if she can be good, especially after this bad thing she did. And then she tried to do that bad thing again with Morgan, but she told herself, no, she's good. She's a good person. She's not going to do that. And so you're like, oh, there's always this bad looming inside of Millie, but she is overcoming it, trying to be a good person. And then you completely ruin that with her going, yeah, I killed Phoebe, ha ha ha, and I do it again. I did it for selfish reasons. I did it because I wanted to stay with the family, and I need this more than she did, and she was a bad person, and I'm a good person, blah, blah, blah. It just completely ruined the book for me. So it was like a 3-star read for most of the book, and then the last few chapters, I was like, this is 1 star. 1 star. I can't with it. I can't believe it went down that road. I also don't know where to put this. But there were some like really weird things that were just kind of funny to me that I wanted to talk about. First of all, the name drop of the book. So the book is called Good Me, Bad Me, obviously. And Millie finds out that the psychologist guy, the foster dad, was writing a book about her, and in his notes he's talking about like Millie's internal conflict, and at a certain point in her narration she literally says good me, bad me, and I was like, really? That just cheapens it so much. I feel like if the title had been anything else, maybe like A Killer's Daughter or something like that, some other kind of title, then that line would have so much more depth to it and feel so much deeper, even if it's not that deep, but it would feel so much like better. But because it's the title of the book, her saying that like in the narration just made it seem really cheap and gross and like uncomfortable to me. And that's a personal opinion, I get, but like, come on, that just felt really wrong to be like name drop, haha. Another thing that was really fucking dumb is that anytime Millie would be playing cat and mouse with Phoebe would say something really mean, and then Millie would think something blah blah blah, like I'm gonna get you, and then there would be like a line of Humpty Dumpty. So it'd be like Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, and then like a couple chapters later it'd be like Phoebe being a bully, and then it'd be like all the king's horses and all the king's men, and then blah blah blah, and finally it's revealed that Phoebe like fell off the banister and like cracked her head open and died. And so as it's like they say that, and then in italics it's Millie thinking Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and I was like, really, that's so dumb. I understand that's like foreshadowing, but it was such a dumb way of doing it. Like, I get having this like this repeated narration. I have some of my favorite books do similar things where they like repeat this like fairy tale or this one line, and then it only makes sense at the end of the book. But like that just really, Humpty Dumpty is like the least sinister thing I could think of, and the fact that it's like Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, I was so pissed about that. I was like, really? None of it seemed very deep. Oh, Joe, the character of Joe seemed really superfluous. So they go to an all-girls private school, and there's like a brother school, so they're like connected, and they have a field trip, and she sits like alone at the front of the bus so that nobody talks to her, and then Joe sits next to her, and she's like, I don't like you, and he's trying to make conversation with her, and he's like connecting with her, trying to be like, I understand that you're different, I'm also different, like I get it. And then Phoebe is mean to her, and Joe is nice to her, and that's about it. And then at the very end, when things are looking up for Millie, like she's taken the place of Phoebe, I forget, Saskia or somebody is like, oh yeah, Joe wants to ask you out to a party. How do you feel about that? And she's like, oh, great. And it's like, I get she wants to have like a normal life and have normal boys, but I feel like Joe didn't do enough for that to actually matter. It wasn't like she thought about him often. It wasn't like he was the only person who showed her kindness. It wasn't like he was like the first boy to ever talk to her. He seemed unnecessary, and if you took him out of the book completely, it would be fine. It's like the male version of a sexy lamp thing. It's like he could be replaced with anybody and it wouldn't change. Her mom is called the Peter Pan killer because she takes children, and Millie's favorite book is Peter Pan. Okay, it's like not a big thematic thing either. It's not like she's constantly calling back to Peter Pan or the situations of Peter Pan. It's just like mentioned a few times, and it's like, my mom was called the Peter Pan killer in the news. So on the back of the book, it says that Allie Land has a degree in mental health and spent a decade working as a child and adolescence mental health nurse. So I assumed that this is coming from some experience of things she's seen and witnessed as a mental health worker. But I don't know, it just felt kind of gauche to me. And it just talks about mental illness in a very not good way, a very commodifying and dehumanizing way, especially with the end of it. Like if it had stopped again, like with her deciding not to hurt Morgan, I feel like it would have been much more tolerable as a read of like, this is somebody struggling with mental health, and especially like a thing I could never ever think about going through. And you know, it's kind of weird, but you know, at the end of the day, it makes sense, and I think it's a good conversation to have of people, you know, coming from those kind of circumstances are worthy of being good and being redeemed. But no, because it ended with her killing Phoebe and being manipulative and being like, I can't get caught this time, I learned from my mother how not to get caught. I was like, you really just didn't, like, that's so it took any conversation it could start about mental health awareness and trauma and stuff like that, and just turned it sour. That was my rant review, just regular review of Good Me Bad Me, another Dollar Tree book. I think it's worth $1. Like, up until the end, it was a pretty okay read for me, so I think at least for $1, like, I'm not mad that I spent $1 on it. If you like that, I will hopefully be posting more book reviews. I like reading books. I want to read more books this year, so hopefully I'll be reading more and posting more reviews about them. Let's see how I feel about editing these videos, because oh my god, I'm so washed out. I don't have a nose. There we go. Let's see how I feel about editing these videos and if I'll ever post them.